said, you've already said you're an atheist. You don't think there's any judgment that you'll ultimately come to on the other side before the ultimate judge, if you will. So if you deceive us, we won't ever know. And in your mind, you get away with something. And so we can't trust your testimony because you refuse to take an oath. Now, that's kind of how we're doing it today. People cross their fingers and take the oath or whatever they do, but they're not abiding by it. Now, you mentioned something else about being honest, too. Now, let's not just be honest. Let's come forward with, I think, goodness, wisdom, and honesty are important. Now, the honesty, now, Mao Zedong and Hitler and all of his followers and their followers may have honestly believed what they believed, but they were wrong. And they may have been ostensibly good. Now, Machiavelli writes a lot about that in The Prince. I don't know if...
I think they were all liars, but that's my opinion. Go on.
That's right, they were liars. But the Prince shows the ostensibly good people, that were the leaders. They showed themselves as honorable men before the people, but they would knife anybody in the back to hold power. So ostensibly they were good, and ostensibly they believed everything they were doing. But the wisdom is following the founders' words, following the absolute pattern of what was brought forth. So there must be wise leaders. Wise leaders do not follow socialism. Wise leaders follow the oath of office. They follow the charter that was written for the nation, and they carry it forth, and they do their job in accordance with that oath and according to that charter. That's where we have good, wise, and honest individuals. And that way I think we'll be able to stay free.
Okay, great. I think evil men destroy and good men build. And I think there are a lot of destroyers, and there's some good, too, out there. So it's great to talk to you.
Some are even, shall we say, deceived in their own minds. I don't know how to put it. They're either ignorant, or they're really bad, or they just haven't been taught. Or I don't know, maybe that goes with ignorance. But the fact of the matter is we can't afford leadership like that. This nation needs to go back to the statesman-like leadership of the Washingtons and the Madisons and the Jeffersons, and we could make a list. But you understand what I'm saying.
I think there are a lot of people in this country that just need to be shown. And once they see the intent of the Constitution, what the oath is and who has taken it, I think it's going to be a paradigm shift for many, many people. And so public awareness is a great tool.
Well, that's one of our intentions, and we hope with people like you to help carry this forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to do this.
Great. Do you have any other thoughts about your race or anything?
Oh, I've got plenty of thoughts, but we hope that we can develop those out with our people that are willing to listen to us throughout the entire election process, and we can unfold, I think, a true pattern of success that will address, using constitutional principle, the things that face the nation today. We say often we don't live in 1787, but we do live at a time when those principles still apply. So we as Americans have got to go back to the principles and apply those principles to the challenges that face America today. And that's what we intend to do.
I think, and I've thought, what is the most simple way to explain the Constitution? And I come up with the commandment, thou shalt not steal. That would be the most basic.
Well, the Constitution certainly does not grant the national government the power to steal. It's because stealing means taking and using improperly. Now, obviously, the power to tax is granted in there, but it's a power to tax within this complete specifics of what the powers granted were. They do not have power to tax to redistribute anything or to take it for other purposes other than what's specifically designed in the United States Constitution. And beyond that, we are stealing.
And they only have power to tax us as we agree to let them, right?
Absolutely. And Washington talked about that in his farewell address, too, which is a really interesting document to read, which I highly recommend to your listeners and viewers. But the fact of the matter is also, Madison spoke of this in the Federalist Papers, and it was spoken of at length in the convention of 1787, about most of our revenue stream was to come from our imports.
Never from income, right?
Certainly never from income. Of course, the 16th Amendment fouled all of that up. But the fact of the matter is that is a constitutional tax on imports. Okay. Now, with these so-called free trade agreements, which aren't free trade, what they are is managed trade, and they put us at a disadvantage with a group of other nations that can outvote us. So we end up losing a constitutional taxing process, and we end up putting it on the backs of either the taxpayers now or on our children that have to go for the debt that we are. So we've strayed so far, we could take the Constitution line by line by line. The very first line even, they violate. So it's interesting.
Well, if the Federal Reserve banks and the owners of the shareholders of those banks that own the Federal Reserve, if they all woke up one morning like Scrooge and decided, oh my gosh, we've been crooked, we've been dishonest, and they wanted to return all that wealth, wouldn't that eliminate income tax completely and wipe out our debt completely, our national debt?
Well, actually, we don't have enough. Well, if they returned all the money, maybe, but we don't have a big enough revenue stream right now to even cover the expenses we're doing right now because of the unconstitutional spending that's going on. Our revenue stream within the nation is nowhere close to that. We end up building our deficit at 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 trillion dollars annually lately, to the point that we're just overspending what our income is. It's like if you did this in your home, you would have been bankrupt a long time ago. So just returning it is not the solution, I don't think.
We got to stop the spending.
We got to stop the spending, all the entitlements and everything else that's going on.
But if we were printing our own money, we would only have inflation instead of inflation and debt. Isn't that right?
If the money was not printed under the loan from the Federal Reserve. And
if we were printing it ourselves, then we'd suffer inflation, but we wouldn't have debt. We just have inflation. Does that make sense?
And we're so foolish to allow someone else to print it and borrow it and everything. And we don't want to even suffer from inflation, because we can look at Zimbabwe, for example. I have a stack of $100 trillion notes, single notes from Zimbabwe. They're $100 trillion. Zimbabwe uses a dollar as a denominator.
I'd like to get one of those.
Well, I'll have to arrange that. But the fact of the matter is, they have just willy-nilly created money out of thin air, and their inflation is out of sight. I mean, so
they only have inflation. They don't have debt. They just have inflation.
Right, but you can't burn the money fast enough to keep warm.
So we've got to stop spending, and we've got to create our own money, not let someone else do it.
Right. And we've got to go to a sound foundation again on our money system, so that we are not just allowed to willy-nilly run things. I use that term fairly often because that's how we're running our government.
Yeah. Well, the Federal Reserve could be creating Federal Reserve notes in China. They could be creating it in every country of the world and loaning it to the governments. We wouldn't even know. And I guess that's why they want out of the Fed. One of the reasons. That's a good reason.
We don't know. You bring a good point up. We don't know.
Well, this has been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your viewers, and hope that they'll find this edifying for their decision they're going to make on who they send back to the United States Senate.
We're going to put your website information or contact information too on the DVD if you'd like. And
I love that.
What is your website?
It's